Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
I am ready for the event.
Boston Museum of Science, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Museum of Science, Boston. How do you hear me?
I hear you loud and clear. Welcome aboard the space station.
All right. Commander Kelly, we are so excited to talk to you today. We have a lot of high school students who have some questions. Our first one is Lily.
What are your responsibilities for keeping everything running smoothly?
Well, there are 6 of us on board, and, we share most of the responsibilities. Since we're, so far away and going around the Earth at pretty high speed, we can't just call out for a repairman. So, one of our jobs is keeping all the systems maintained. If something breaks, we have to fix it, whether it's, a problem with the life support system or, the electrical systems inside or outside for that matter. We do a lot of science experiments. So we're also the, the eyes and ears and the arms of the scientists on the ground. And, in some cases we're the scientific subjects for human research. And as the commander of the space station, I'm also responsible for, the overall kind of safety of how we operate on board and how we would respond in the case of an emergency.
Did you dream of being an astronaut when you were younger, or did you stumble upon the profession?
Probably somewhere in between. I was, I had thought about being an astronaut when I was a kid, but I think a lot of kids think about being an astronaut when they're a kid. And, it wasn't later until a little bit later in my life that I realized, sometimes your dreams do come true. Having said that, I was in a kind of in a position as a pilot and a test pilot in the United States Navy where I could, apply and be competitive. So probably wasn't until I was, in my early 30s that I realized that, hey, this is probably, something that might not be completely out of the realm of a possibility for a job.
What was one of the hardest challenges you faced as an astronaut?
Yeah, that's pretty easy. I was up here when my sister-in-law, on my last flight, Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords was shot in Tucson with a bunch of other people. Some of those people were killed, and I still wasn't coming home for a few months, so that was a very difficult time. Also, 3 of my classmates lost their lives on Columbia, and as well as their crewmates and my colleagues. So that was definitely a difficult time as well.
What personal goals do you want to accomplish in space?
I think the question is, what kind of goals do I want to accomplish in space? We have a lot of mission objectives on the space station. There's 400 different scientific experiments that are going on throughout the year I'm here. One of my goals would be to do all those and do them well, and have the researchers on the ground be happy with the results and the data they are getting. My other big goal is that, we don't, have anyone get hurt up here. We're very safe about how we operate. We take good care of the space station and its hardware, and leave this magnificent facility in better condition than when I arrived. So, safety, and then taking care of the hardware and completing all the work that's asked of us are my main goals.
Is there anything about being in space that you feel unprepared for?
We have a pretty big system on the ground that, that trains us. And, we do training in Houston, we do training in Japan and Europe and in Germany and Russia. We spend a lot of time there, also in Canada. And, we have a great team on the ground that prepares us to come up here. So, I think, for the most part, as far as the kind of the work tasks that I've been asked to do, I feel pretty prepared. Some of the stuff that might be a little bit surprising. For instance, I did a couple of spacewalks recently, and I was really surprised at how much, better the view was when you're in the spacesuit crawling around on the outside of the space station. I'd been flying in space. My first flight was in 1999, and, I've spent a lot of time in space previously, and I didn't really realize how much better the view would be. So that was a little bit surprising. I guess maybe I was unprepared for that.
How does getting a glimpse at the scale of the universe affect perception of global events and conflict?
I don't know if it's getting a glimpse of the universe, but definitely, at least for me, when I'm up here and been up here for a long time now, and you do feel a sense of detachment from the Earth. So it almost feels like, you and your crewmates are here, and everything else that's going on is, 250 miles below my feet. And so, I think there's a little bit more of an awareness about, events on the Earth and how, they impact, one another and, the environment. And, you have a certain, I think, a different kind of empathy for, what's going on our planet when you're not on the planet. That's something I think I was a little bit unprepared for as well, to go back to the, the previous question.
With so many astronauts coming from so many different cultures, do you ever find that there are culture clashes?
I don't think you would we would have culture clashes, or I would describe, really, we don't really have any conflict. One of the great things about this program is it is an international program, and you do get to experience, the different cultures that are involved in this program. And it's, you do recognize there are differences. And there are, differences between, our countries and just our perceptions. But that's something I think that makes this program great, and something I've really learned to appreciate.
Do you ever get homesick?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it homesick. It's not. I've been up here, I don't even know how long now, over 250 days. And there's definitely a lot of things on Earth that I miss. And, but I still appreciate this opportunity and, still enjoy a lot about being up here. But so I wouldn't really call it homesick as if I have this, overwhelming longing and, desire, like this overwhelming desire that I need to get back home. It's not quite like that, but definitely there are things that I miss on Earth. People, human, contact. Even though the people up here are great, there's not many of us, and the variety is good. And also just being outside and having the freedom to kind of do and go where you want, and just experience nature. It's just a pretty closed environment we live in up here. So it's kind of like if you never left your house.
Can you describe how it feels being in space for such a long period of time?
Yeah, so, the space station is pretty big. So it's not like I get claustrophobic. But like I said previously, you do miss going outside. Miss having that kind of freedom to do what you want. We live on a very tightly controlled schedule, so you're pretty much scheduled except on the weekends from when you wake up until when you go to sleep, and you're always trying to think ahead. Hey, what's the next thing I have to do? When I go to sleep at night, I'm at work, and when I wake up in the morning, I'm still at work. It's like you've gone to your office somewhere if you work in an office and you've never left. The microgravity environment, although it looks like it's fun, which it is, it makes a lot of things more difficult to do. With the exception of moving around heavy objects and maybe getting into some kind of position. If I needed to, work on something up here on the ceiling, I could turn like that. Most everything is more of a makes it more difficult because everything's got to be velcroed to the wall or secured somewhere to the ceiling, to the floor. So it's makes it a much challenging work environment.
How do you eat your food in space?
How do you eat your food? I got some food here. We have this rehydratable food. This is a sweet and sour chicken. So the water dispenser is right here. I can show you. We just add water to it and put a little water in this, and it rehydrates. I had lunch already, so I'm not going to eat it now, but just put water in it and, open it up, and it's not too bad. Then we have stuff that's irradiated food, and it's in these packages. So, you open up the package, and this stuff is already wet, so it, kind of sticks together, and you just eat it out of the bag with a spoon.
How does your social media work? Do you take photos that you send back to Earth for other people to post, or can you post the images yourselves?
Yeah, so we've got a lot of cameras on board. Yeah, I take the pictures, even though you didn't ask that question. But like a lot of the pictures I take of the Earth, I use this long lens camera through this window right down here that's right below us, and then I post them. Normally, I post them myself. Although I don't do that all the time, it depends. But most of the time, I do it myself. We have an internet connection, and but everything I post is my picture and my words. And the internet connection is kind of slow, so it it takes some time. It's kind of like old-fashioned dial-up, but it's usable.
Do astronauts have to be engineers? Do they know how to code and program?
So they don't have to be engineers, but most. I'm waving one of my colleagues through here. He's going down to the Russian segment, and so most astronauts have some kind of do have a technical background in science, engineering, math. I was an engineering major in college, but a pilot in the Navy, and some astronauts are in the military. Currently on board, we have one Russian pilot from the Russian military. My Japanese colleague was a F-15 pilot in the Japanese Air Force. American colleague is a medical doctor, and then the two cosmonauts are engineers. As far as coding and programming, no, you don't need to know that. Although we, as a skill that you come into the astronaut office or the astronaut program with, although we do have a lot of computers, and there's a huge network of computers here that we actually have to take care of them. The computer network, but we don't, do what I think you're describing.
Do you perceive night and day differently because you see the sun differently?
Yeah, so we're flying around the Earth every 90 minutes. So, there's a sunrise and a sunset every 90 minutes. So, and as a result, you do perceive night and day somewhat differently, but it's not really because of that, because we're not looking outside all the time. We don't have a whole lot of time to look outside. So mostly our perception of night and day is really not having much of a perception of it, because we're living in this enclosed environment, and we're not outside. It's kind of like the perception you would have in your house if you closed all the blinds and never left.
What of being on the ISS?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat your question. I didn't hear the first part.
The favorite part of being on the ISS for you?
A lot of this stuff is great, right? So the floating is fun, and the view is great. But the best part about this for me is doing something that is incredibly challenging, incredibly difficult, work hard at it, and then the feeling of satisfaction you get from doing a good job. And that's what I like about flying in space, is really just the challenge and the the hard work, and then hopefully being successful at it. And that's something that I tell kids and other people, that you can do that in the space program, but you can do that in many other things in your life that you choose. Choose something that challenges you, work hard at it, and then be proud of your successes.
What was it like adapting to the conditions on Earth when you turned from space?
Yeah, you're definitely dizzy. You're sore for a while. At least I was. Your joints up here. I think everyone's different, but for me, it's much better here, because there's not a whole lot of stress on them. So I generally don't feel as have as much like joint pain and things like that. And then when you get back on Earth, that kind of all comes back. But you're dizzy at first, and being up here for a long time is much different than a shuttle flight, and how your vestibular system is affected. But you pretty quickly adapt back to Earth, and which means in some ways you feel better, and in some ways you feel worse.
How do you shower in space?
Yeah, so we don't shower. We don't have a shower or bathtub. What we do is we get some water out of the water dispenser, and we put it on a towel similar to this one, and get it wet, and then that's the shower. That's the space shower right there.
Do you have any downtime, and if so, what do you do with that time?
We have a little bit of time in the evenings, but most of our waking hours during the week is work. We get up around 6:30 in the morning, and kind of prepare for the day, and the last kind of official activity we have is around 7 or 7:30 at night, a meeting with the ground to talk about any questions that remain from the day, about the work we get day. And then we generally go to sleep around 10 o'clock at night, so there's a little bit of time there in the evenings, and then on the weekends. And what I do, and I think most people do, is you take pictures of the Earth. Sometimes you might watch movies, read a book, and I think people, myself included, spend a lot of time communicating with folks on the ground via email, or sometimes the phone, things like that.
What is it like to use the bathroom in space?
What's it like to use the bathroom? Like I said earlier, a lot of things are made more challenging up here because everything floats, and that's one of them.
Do you have trouble sleeping?
Yeah, sometimes I think I sleep okay up here and other times not. It's different, in some ways it's more comfortable and in some ways less. I think, one of the reasons why it's is less comfortable is the same position I'm in right now, and kind of the level of comfort is the same whether I'm asleep or awake. It's just like this. So it's not like when you are on Earth and you go lay down in your bed and you get an immediately like a change in your comfort level because now you're lying down. So, for me, that lack of that change in how comfortable you feel makes, I think, sleeping up here, especially over long periods of time, less appealing.
Do you believe there is life outside our solar system?
I do. There are so many different stars out there in the universe. Apparently more than, in every beach and on every desert on Earth. And if you consider those kind of numbers, and, we fly over a lot of those beaches and deserts, and there's a lot of sand down there. If you consider that's how many stars there are and the potential for planets that would be inhabitable, I just have to believe that there is life out there. Now, I don't know what kind of life, but I think it would be very unlikely that there wasn't. I also believe that the distances are so great, it's not like that life is visiting our planet, in the form of like UFOs or anything like that. So, on one hand, yeah, I believe there is life out there, but I don't believe that, we experience it in the form of visitors.
Commander Kelly, thanks so much for talking to us today. The space station will be flying over Boston at 11:10 Greenwich time, so we'll all be waving. Guys, let's thank Commander Kelly for.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes our event.
Thank you, Boston Museum of Science Station. We are resuming operational audio comm.